Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the documents scattered across her desk, her hands trembling slightly in the pale light of her laboratory. The declassified government reports from the 1987 Arctic expedition she had just received contained details that nobody should have known. As a forensic anthropologist, she had studied history's most famous cases of survival cannibalism from the lost. Franklin expedition in the Arctic in 1845 to the crash of Uruguayan flight, 571 in the Andes in 1972, but what she was discovering now defied all rational understanding. The grainy photographs showed human bones arranged in complex ritual patterns, carved with symbols Sarah recognized from ancient Inuit cultures. But there was something else, something in these markings, that gave her goosebumps. 3 months earlier, the Boreas energy drilling team had made a macabre discovery in eastern Siberia. 40 meters beneath the permafrost layer, they had found the perfectly preserved remains of a camp apparently dating from the 19th century. What had immediately alerted the authorities was the state of the bodies. 13 men and women, several bearing unmistakable marks of post-mortem butchering. Sarah had been called to the site by the Russian government, officially to document what appeared to be a historical case of survival cannibalism. But upon arriving at the temporary base established near the excavation site, she quickly understood that something was wrong. Dr. Viktor Petrov, the local archaeologist leading the excavation, greeted her with a mixture of visible relief and anxiety. "Dr. Chen, thank you for coming so quickly," he said in Russian-accented English. "What we have found. It is disturbing, even for someone accustomed to the horrors of the past." Sarah followed Petrov to the excavation site, a heated temporary structure built over the drilling hole. The smell that greeted her made her step back, an acrid mixture of decomposing flesh and something else she couldn't identify. "The bodies are remarkably well preserved by the cold," Petrov explained as he guided her to the examination tables. "But look at the cutting marks." Sarah put on her gloves and leaned over the first body. Middle-aged man, dressed in furs typical of 19th century explorers. But what immediately struck her were the precise incisions on the long bones, too methodical to be the simple result of desperate hunger. "These marks, they follow a pattern," she murmured, tracing the notches in the bone with her finger. "Isn't ordinary survival cannibalism?" "Exactly," Petrov confirmed. "And that's not all. Look at this." He led her to a table where objects found with the bodies were arranged. Metal knives, cooking utensils, but also more disturbing objects. Necklaces made of human teeth, bowls carved from skulls, and most importantly, a journal written in English in tight, frantic handwriting. Sarah carefully took the journal in her hands. The leather cover was stained with what looked like dried blood. She opened it to the first page, Expedition Journal of James Whitmore, geologist. Sir Edmund Blackwood's Arctic Expedition, 1847. "If anyone finds this journal, know that we were civilized men before this curse befell us." Sarah continued reading, increasingly disturbed by each page. October 15th, 1847. Our ship. HMS Perseverance has been trapped in ice for 6 weeks now. Provisions are running dangerously low. Sir Blackwood keeps the men's morale up, but I see in their eyes the same fear that gnaws at me. November 3rd, 1847. Seaman Thompson died last night. Scurvy finally taking him. Sir Blackwood suggested. No, I cannot write that. Not yet. November 10th, 1847, we did it. God forgive us. We ate Thompson. But something strange happened. After tasting his flesh, I felt a hunger I had never known before. A hunger that couldn't seem to be satisfied by ordinary food. Sarah looked up at Petrov. "Have you read all of this?" "To the end," he replied grimly. "It becomes much more disturbing." She resumed reading. November 18th, 1847. The hunger consumes me. We finished Thompson days ago, but this craving, its need, ... grows in me like a living creature. Last night I caught Barnes looking at young Murphy with eyes I recognized all too well. Because I feel the same thing. November 25th, 1847, Murphy. Disappeared last night. We all pretend he might have gone out and gotten lost in the storm, but we all know the truth. Barnes had blood under his nails this morning, and that smile, that horrifying smile he now wears. December 1st, 1847, we are no longer men. Something has taken us, something ancient and hungry. Human flesh is no longer a necessity. It has become our only joy. Blackwood speaks of rituals he learned from Inuit guides before they abandoned us, terrified. He says certain hungers can never be satisfied, that they are transmitted from mouth to mouth, like a spiritual contagion. Sarah closed the journal, deeply disturbed. As a scientist, she always sought rational explanations, but what she was reading defied all logic. Dr. Petrov, have you noticed anything unusual since the excavations began? The Russian hesitated. Why do you ask? Please answer me. Well, the drilling team that made the initial discovery, 3 of them had to be hospitalized. For what? Severe eating disorders. They had developed particular appetites. One of them was found chewing his own flesh. Doctors say it's post-traumatic stress, but Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. But you don't believe that. Dr. Chen, I have studied archaeological sites for 20 years. I have seen things that science cannot explain. And since we began handling these bodies, I have dreams. What kind of dreams, Petrov? Lowered his voice. I dream that I eat, that I devour. And in these dreams, I am never satisfied. I wake up with a metallic taste in my mouth and this atrocious hunger. For how long? Since the first night after opening the site, and I'm not the only one. The entire excavation team reports the same symptoms. At that precise moment, Sarah realized with horror that she too had been feeling something strange since her arrival. This persistent sensation of hunger, even after eating. The way her gaze lingered on Petrov's exposed neck when he spoke. She picked up the journal again with trembling hands and continued reading. December 10th, 1847. Blackwood finally revealed what he knew. The Inuit guides had told him of a wendigo, a cannibal spirit that possesses those who taste human flesh under certain conditions. But this is not a simple wendigo. It is something worse, something that is transmitted not only by the act of cannibalism, but by mere exposure to its victims. December 15th, 1847. We are dying one by one, but death does not free us. Those who fall become even hungrier in death. They rise at night to continue feeding. Blackwood says it is a curse that goes back millennia, transmitted from tribe to tribe by those who survive famine by feeding on their kind. December 20th, 1847, I will soon join the others. But before that, I must write the truth. This hunger is not natural. It is alive, conscious. It learns from each host it possesses and becomes smarter, craftier. If anyone finds this journal, burn everything. Burn the bodies, burn the objects, burn this journal. Leave nothing, or the hunger will spread. Final entry. It is too late for me. I feel my teeth lengthening, my nails becoming claws. The hunger calls me, and I can no longer resist. Shh. To whoever finds this, run. Sarah dropped the journal as if it had burned her. We must evacuate immediately, she told Petrov. But when she turned to him, she saw that his eyes had changed. The pupils were dilated, and when he smiled, she noticed his teeth seemed sharper than before. It's too late for that, Dr. Chen, he said in a strangely cavernous voice. The hunger has already found us. Sarah backed toward the exit, but heard voices outside, the excavation team returning. And in those voices, she perceived something new, something hungry. She headed for the satellite phone and frantically dialed the Moscow authorities. This is Dr. Chen, Boreas 7 excavation site. We have a major health emergency. Immediately send. A quarantine team? And ... The line was cut? Behind her, Petrov laughed softly. You don't understand, Doctor. Don't want to be saved. This hunger, ... It completes us. It makes us whole. Sarah looked around desperately for an exit. She noticed something horrible. The bodies on the examination tables were moving slightly, as if they were breathing. Looking more carefully, Sarah realized the bodies hadn't been dead for long. The permafrost had preserved them, certainly, but they weren't really dead. They were in suspension, kept alive by the supernatural hunger that inhabited them. One of the bodies, the one she had identified as James Whitmore himself, suddenly opened his eyes. Eyes black as charcoal, but bright with malevolent intelligence. Finally, he murmured in a voice hoarse as Arctic wind, "New hosts." Sarah then understood the terrible truth. Blackwood's expedition had never really ended. They had remained there under the ice, waiting for someone to discover them so the contagion could spread again. "You've been alive all this time." Whitmore slowly sat up, his joints cracking after more than a century of immobility. "Alive? Not really. We are something different now. Something hungrier." The other bodies were beginning to animate around her. 13 emaciated but terrifying figures, their faces hollowed by eternal hunger. "The Wendigo curse is real," Whitmore continued, "but it has evolved with us. Each time it finds new hosts, it learns, it adapts. We are no longer simple hungry cannibals. We have become the guardians of an ancestral hunger that seeks to consume the world." Sarah felt her own thoughts becoming blurred. The hunger she had noticed earlier was growing, becoming a devouring obsession. She looked at her hands and saw with horror that her nails were lengthening, becoming claws. "Don't be afraid," said Petrov, whose transformation was even more advanced. His skin had taken on a grayish tint, and his features had become gaunt. "Accepting it makes everything easier." "No," Sarah whispered, fighting against the hunger rising within her. "There must be a way to stop this." Whitmore burst into laughter. That echoed like breaking bones. "Think you're the first to try? We've had over a century to think about our condition. This hunger isn't a disease you can cure, it's an evolution. Humanity has always been cannibal at heart. We're just revealing your true nature." Sarah remembered the journal's words, "Burn everything." Maybe there was still a way. She looked toward the fuel tanks used to power the camp's generators. "You can try," said Whitmore, reading her thoughts. "But fire won't stop us. We've already survived much worse." Despite this, Sarah moved toward the tanks. But her legs betrayed her, and she collapsed. The transformation was accelerating, and she felt her will eroding. "Let yourself go," whispered a voice behind her. "Tch." One of the excavation team members had entered, his eyes now completely black. "Hunger frees us from everything that made us weak." 3 weeks later, Russian authorities lost contact with the entire excavation site. A rescue team was sent, but they found the camp abandoned, with only traces of struggle and blood marks in the snow. The official report concluded it was a tragic accident, probably a polar bear attack or collapse of the temporary structure. The victims' bodies were never found, but Dr. Sarah Chen knew the truth. She was now one of them, one of the hungry. The transformation had been complete, and with it came a terrible understanding. They were no longer limited to the Arctic. Hunger drove them south, toward cities, toward dense populations where they could feed and reproduce. Every person they touched, every drop of their saliva or blood that came into contact with a potential host, spread the contagion. Sarah now stood in a Moscow airport, watching crowds of travelers. Her hunger was insatiable, but she had learned patience. A smile stretched her two pale lips as she boarded an international flight. Whitmore's curse was about to go global. 6 months after the Siberian incident, strange cases began appearing worldwide. First in Moscow, then London, New York, Tokyo, individuals suddenly developed extreme eating disorders, according to medical reports. They lost weight rapidly. Despite constant food consumption, developed increasing aggression, and in the most severe cases, physically attacked their loved ones. Dr. Marcus Webb, an epidemiologist at the Atlanta CDC, was the first to notice similarities between these apparently isolated cases. All patients presented the same symptoms: insatiable hunger, physical changes, lengthening of nails and teeth, extreme pallor, and most importantly, increasingly predatory behavior. This isn't a conventional virus, he explained during an emergency conference with the WHO. Blood tests reveal no known pathogen, but something is fundamentally altering these patients' metabolism. What Webb didn't know was that Sarah Chen was now in Atlanta. She had taken the identity of an international public health consultant, and her hunger had guided her directly to the most important medical research centers. She watched the conference. From the back of the room, her smile widening with each incorrect hypothesis the scientists formulated. They were looking for a biological explanation for something beyond their understanding. Late at night, Sarah broke into Webb's laboratory. She found him still working, bent over blood samples taken from infected patients. "Dr. Webb," she said softly. He turned, surprised. "What are you? How did you get in here? I'm someone who can give you the answers you're looking for." Webb instinctively backed away. Something in this woman's voice made him deeply uncomfortable. "These cases you're studying," Sarah continued, slowly approaching, "you'll never find a traditional scientific explanation, because it's not a disease in the way you understand it." "Then what is it?" "Evolution. A transformation of the human species into something more ... hungry." Webb tried to escape, but Sarah was faster. Her claws, now fully developed, closed around his arm. "Don't be afraid," she whispered. "You'll understand soon." 1 year after the Siberian incident, the world had changed. The epidemic had spread to all major cities, transforming millions of people. Governments tried to maintain secrecy, but extreme eating disorders had become so common that it was impossible to hide them. The infected, who they now called the hungry, had developed a parallel society. They still fed, but they had learned discretion. A harvest here, an amputated limb there, always arranging for their victims to survive. To tell stories of accidents or animal attacks, Sarah Chen had become one of the leaders of this new species. She stood in her office in what was once the WHO, now controlled by the hungry. Before her lay a detailed plan for expanding their influence. "Humanity has always been hungry," she told her lieutenants, all former scientists and world leaders. Now transformed, hungry for power, hungry for wealth, hungry for flesh. We're just making that hunger literal. She looked out the window at the streets of Geneva, where normal humans still went about their business, unaware that their world was already controlled by predators. "The contagion phase is over," she announced. "It's time for the farming phase." Hungry had realized that completely exterminating normal humanity would be counterproductive. They needed livestock, a constant source of food. And who better to organize this than former scientists and leaders, now endowed with eternal hunger and intelligence, enhanced by their transformation. In the city's basements, the first supply centers were already under construction. Facilities where humans would be raised under optimal conditions, their limbs harvested according to a strict schedule to ensure regeneration. Sarah smiled, her teeth now completely transformed into fangs. Whitmore's expedition had finally achieved its goal, spreading eternal hunger across the world. And the most beautiful thing about it all was that most humans hadn't realized anything yet. The new era of humanity had just begun. An era where hunger would never again be satisfied. Because it had become the very nature of the dominant species. And in the depths of Siberia, under the permafrost slowly melting due to global warming, other ancient secrets began to stir, awakened. By the success of their cannibal brothers, the story of humanity was coming to an end. The story of the hungry was just beginning.